Hello everyone, this is Ryoko368 and welcome to the FanFic Critic vlog. This is vlog number 5, part 3, so this is the final part of this review. Just to remind everyone, we are reviewing a fanfic called Nostalgia Critic Meets the FanFic Critic. If you haven't seen the other 2 parts, I recommend you watch those first, but if you just want to dive in at the tail end of it, then I guess I can't stop you. Alright, so let's get moving on, and that came out wrong too, with, Chapter 3. The machine was working into overdrive as steam erupted out of the top like a volcano. Turl watched jubilantly. He knew that victory would be his soon enough. It was difficult for him to contain his excitement. Jumping up and about like a little schoolgirl, he clapped his hands together.
Oh, joy! I knew that all those years of training at the most pretentious military academies in the galaxy would benefit me someday. I wasn't sure in what way it could benefit me.
What, you don't like my accent, Cat? The cats have been, like, taking turns coming on my lap. So Catty's now on my lap. So where do we leave off?
I wasn't sure in what way it would benefit me, but I have to admit, this isn't quite what I imagined. But still, it is glorious.
His high-pitched shriek echoed loudly enough with the sounds of continuing gears and cogs in the machine. Just then, a voice called out behind him. I'm going to assume it's the Nostalgia Critic saying this, so... Boy, haven't up anymore, and you could be the lead for the new Babe film! Turl's elated mood disappeared immediately after hearing that voice, for the alien Nostalgia Critic's voice was the equivalent of a scorpion sting in the Cyclo-Pirates. He balled his fists and turned around to find the 2 critics standing before him, ready for action.
Curse you! How did you both escape my inescapable prison?
Were you really asking us that unironically? Nostalgia Critic snapped. FanFic Critic gently nudged him. Unironically isn't the correct term. It's not! Now's not the time to be a grammar Nazi! He shot back whilst retrieving his handgun from inside his jacket. Upon seeing his foe's weapon, Turl scoffed and looked on smugly.
You must be joking. Has that already puny brain inside your pathetic animal skull shrunk in the wash? You can't shoot Doris with her force field up.
Now Nostalgia Critic and FanFic Critic were the ones with the smug looks. Maybe not, but I can shoot you, he stated as he pointed his gun at Turl. Turl's face filled with pure dread.
It's starting to come to my attention that I didn't properly think all this through.
Nothing new. Nostalgia Critic squeezed the trigger and Turl closed his eyes ready for the bullet to strike. However, to everyone's shock, the gun not only didn't fire, but it somehow slipped from Nostalgia Critic's grip and dropped to the ground. They all looked at the discarded weapon and couldn't believe their eyes as they watched the gun slowly fade away into oblivion. What just happened? He stopped and felt some tingling in his shooting hand. He looked and saw that, just like the gun, his hand was beginning to fade and disappear, slowly going up his wrist. Why am I going all back to the future? FanFic Critic didn't have a response. She was just as dumbfounded as he was. Out of curiosity, she inspected her own hand and found that she was suffering the same fate. Her hand dwindled like a puff of smoke, slowly rising to her wrist and gradually moving up her arm. She used her other hand to feel for anything, but it passed through completely. They both stared in panic as both their hands were now disappearing from existence. Watching on, Turl raised his hands defensively.
Whatever this is, I swear it wasn't my fault for once.
His attention was turned back to the machine when the loud ringing buzzed in his ear.
Doris is nearly finished.
Running out of time, Nostalgia Critic was really starting to panic. What do we do? I don't know. Not wanting to waste this opportunity to gloat, Turl turned to the disappearing critics and smirked proudly.
I'm not sure what's happening, but I'll take it. Not only will I destroy everything you've worked so hard for, Nostalgia Critic, but I also get to watch you be destroyed literally. Oh, happy days.
He raised a triumphant hand in the air and hooted wildly. It felt like nothing could go wrong for him now. It isn't until he noticed that his raised hand had disappeared from sight.
Why is this happening?
Seeing whatever was happening affect Turl, it dawned on both the critics. They slowly turned to face each other, coming to the same realization. That machine thinks we're... Nostalgia Critic started. Turl turned to them, going into full-fledged panic as he slowly disappeared like his enemies.
What? What does Doris think of me? I've been good to her, I swear it.
FanFic Critic answered. It considers all fan-related creations.
What?
Turl shrieked. You're a parody character based on another character from a film adapted from a book, she replied. It is using the term fan-created loosely enough that it can consider us in the same category because of our shows. Doris thinks we're characters. Turl smirked
obliviously. Well, I have been called quite a character.
Turl! Both critics shouted, making the alien jump. It'll steal and delete you as well if you don't stop it. This has gone too far. You have to turn it off. Nostalgia Critic yelled. For once
I agree with your hypothesis.
The dreadlocked alien rushed over to Doris' side. Okay, let's just say the dissolving Nostalgia Critic and FanFic Critic. I had to say that because for some reason I just couldn't say that word. My mouth is just not functioning today, apparently. Watched on as Terrell flicked a couple of switches and pressed some buttons. Before long, a thin green line gleamed over the machine's surface from top to bottom.
I've turned off Doris's force field.
By now, the lower half of FanFic Critic's arm, all the way up to her elbow, had disappeared. It says disappearing, but it should say had disappeared. And a gaping, transparent hole was starting to form around her waist. Commentary later. Switch it off now, she told him. He nodded and headed to the furthest lever on the machine. Thankfully, he still had one usable hand, and he reached for the lever, but stopped before pulling it. He seemed to hesitate. This didn't sit well with the critics. What are you waiting for? Nostalgia Critic called out. Just pull it. Turl remained motionless. For a split second, it looked like he was about to pull the large switch down to end all this. However, the two critics were left in shock when Turl let go and turned around to face them with a sneer. What are you doing? Nostalgia Critic screamed at the top of his lungs. You'll disappear too, you stupid-ass prick! Turl's voice was quiet.
Even if I disappear forever, if there's a chance to create a world where you will no longer exist, where not even a plot hole can save you, I'll watch it happen over and over 1,000 times if I could.
For the very first time, Nostalgia Critic felt genuine fear staring into Turl's eyes. The Cyclo's smirk never faltered, even as Nostalgia Critic and FanFic Critic looked on at each other and tried to think up of a new idea. What do we do now? Even if I had another weapon, I don't think I could use it, he cried out. The fading was now moving past his elbows and a hole formed over his chest. FanFic Critic was finding it difficult to consider other options in her panic state. Like her friend, a weapon wouldn't be much even if she had, until she remembered. Hold on. She said she awkwardly lowered her body and used her elbows to pull out her Sweeney Todd razor from her jacket. I hope this works. As fast as she could, she pushed the shave hilt against her chin and fumbled it open to reveal the blade. Using what little strength she had to muster, she tossed the blade towards the machine. Everything seemed to move in slow motion as the blade spun and flew in the air. During its flight, it also began to slowly disappear. As the critics held their breath and watched, oh yes, because my blade would be considered a fan creation no matter what, because this is a replica of a Sweeney Todd razor blade, and Sweeney Todd is a work of fiction. And because my fan character uses this, or, the FanFic Critic being a character and stuff, reading fanfics, it would make sense that this being her weapon would disappear. Nostalgia Critic's gun wouldn't disappear, but because this is, a fan thing anyway, it would disappear too. So that's actually really clever. Good job with that. The critics held their breath and watched. Turl, refusing to let his plans be stopped, jumped forward to block the blade. FanFic Critic's heart skipped a beat, either from the fear that Turl was going to intercept their only hope, or because a new hole formed over her chest. The razor would have been caught within Turl's grasp if his other hand didn't suddenly fade away as well, causing it to zoom past. Nothing could stop it now, as the blade finally reached its target and sunk into the machine. Sparks and electric surges shot out from the machine. With a sudden burst of energy exploding from Doris, all three of them were blasted off their feet and sent flying. It was daunting to experience quietness after all they had just been through. But to the critics, the silence was utter bliss. Nostalgia Critic groaned and lifted himself up and rubbed his sore head. Finally! Listening to that racket was like being in an endless Michael Bay marathon. He stopped when he realized that he was rubbing his head with a hand that had supposedly disappeared. He extended his arm and was filled with joy when he saw that it was back to normal. Ah, righty, I missed you. As he proceeded to kiss his hand and as much of his arm as he could, FanFic Critic stood back up, breathing a sigh of relief to find that she was also back to normal. It was difficult to tell if that was her closest brush with death without actually dying, but this was definitely top 3. She then felt her phone vibrating in her pocket. She answered it and was instantly greeted with a memorable voice, and thankfully it's Susan and not the other one. Critic, are you okay? She had never been so happy or relieved to hear Susan's voice. Yeah, I'm fine. Nostalgia Critic too. Bugger. Susan grunted, earning a slight chuckle from her cousin. Anyway, the real reason why I'm calling you is to let you know that whatever you did, it worked. You mean, all the fan fiction and fan art is back. Every site has everything back the way it was. Your videos are all back up too, and running perfectly too. Oh, and Nostalgia Critics as well. She didn't sound too enthusiastic about the last part. With a bright smile, FanFic Critic felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off her shoulders. Thanks, Susan. You're welcome. And, I'm not sure if this is related, but will you be able to explain why for a brief second it felt like I was disappearing off the face of the earth? She grimaced, fearing that this would have happened. After all, if it affected her, why wouldn't it affect Susan? Before she could answer, she heard a wounded groan coming a few feet away, and she saw Turl weakly picking himself off up the ground. Through gritted teeth and a forced smile, she answered Susan. I promise when I get back home, I'll tell you everything. But for now, Nostalgia Critic and I have some unfinished business to take care of. Oh, good. He's not about to kiss you, is he? Susan questioned with obvious disgust in her voice. Ew, no! Thank bloody goodness. Take care. FanFic Critic hung up, just as Nostalgia Critic was done making out with his restored arm. I'm just imagining him like... He noticed Turl slowly getting up. With a knowing smirk plastered on his lips, he and FanFic Critic strutted towards Turl. The Cyclo didn't see them until their shadows loomed over him, and he was on his knees staring up at the two very ticked-off-looking critics. He gulped.
In my defense...
You literally just tried to wipe us out of existence. There's no possible way to defend yourself. Okay, line break. The classic Nostalgia Critic title card and opening theme music played out, revealing the red tie wearing critic in his usual seat, ready for today's work. Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic. I remember it, so you don't have to. Now, today's editorial video was going to be about another subject entirely, but similar in a way. Why the sudden change, you ask? He quickly felt self-satisfied and straightened his attire for effect. Well, it came about while I was busy saving all fandom from a sinister evil. Now, I'm not expecting any kind of reward, but I wouldn't object if anyone wanted. His video was cut off when FanFic Critic popped up on screen and cleared her throat. Nostalgia Critic froze and rolled his eyes. Okay, so I had a little bit of assistance from my special guest today. Your modesty knows no bounds, she said sarcastically at him before getting down to business and addressing her viewers. Hello, I'm the FanFic Critic. I read it, you listen. And what the Nostalgia Critic is trying to say is that the original concept of this video was to talk about the best-selling book, 50 Shades of Grey. He faked a laugh. And I'm so disappointed I won't get to talk about that. Ignoring his jabs at the book, FanFic Critic continued. I don't know why my stuff is all... It's like italicized, but you know what? That's okay. Oh, I think it's because it's supposed to be a different screen because I'm not there with him. It's supposed to be like cutting to, like, say if this was an actual crossover that me and Doug Walker were doing, it would be shooting to my footage and me going on like that. Now, many people don't actually know this, but before 50 Shades was a published book, it was actually a Twilight fan fiction published online. Nostalgia Critic took his turn to comment, as the two critics smoothed into a flowing back-and-forth discussion to the viewers at home. There's still some debate amongst people on how to define the term of fanfiction properly, but the easiest way to sum it up is a creative work that is created by fans of an already existing fandom. This can be anything from written stories to artwork based on existing characters. Hell, it can even go as far as people role-playing as certain characters. It's hard to guess when fan fiction truly begins, since you could even make that argument that ancient tales of Homer or adaptations of the Brothers Grimm fairy tales were technically fan fictions, as they took pre-existing work and gave them a new spin or told the story from a different angle, though modern fan fiction can be seen truly taking off with some Sherlock Holmes and later Star Trek. Star Trek in particular really struck a chord because of the new technology at the time, television, whereas before with movies being a gathering between the upper class, television could expand to almost anyone and show shows to a wider audience like never before. Yet all of that doesn't compare to the internet nowadays, where you could spread your thoughts and ideas to the entire world. Fandoms are like community. People People could not only discuss the things that they liked about certain book or film or television show, they could also tease the ideas of what-if scenarios, expand the worlds they love so much to new heights, where these ideas couldn't be limited by budget or executive intervention. It sounds pretty liberating and engaging. So then why does fanfiction get such a bad rap? Well, there's the obvious legal issue that all the companies fear. Understandable, seeing as many of these fanfictions are based off of copyrighted work, but fanfiction does fall under fair use protection. Not to mention that it's also non-profit, so the writers aren't really getting anything out of it financial-wise. No, there are a couple of other reasons why fanfiction is generally seen in a bad light. Sorry, gotta take a breath. Take a drink. Da-da. Actually, I am glad that my lines are italicized here because it makes it easier for me to go back and forth between being him and being being FanFic Critic. First and foremost, fan fiction is written by the fans. They're not professional writers with years of practice or a master's degree in writing. Maybe some are, but that's a small majority. So obviously many of it is not going to be on the same level of film scripts or published novels. It can just come down to a teenager sitting at a computer writing a chapter one afternoon. Because of this overall more casual quality of writing and storytelling, the general public will look down on these works as either simple at best or at worst abominations. And that's me keeping my language PG. Not to mention some fans can be so protective of something they love, sometimes too overprotective, if they come across a story they don't feel represents their characters in the right way, or the story isn't going in the direction they thought it might, they consider it to be inferior and not worth anyone's time. But that's just some fans' opinions. What about the professional workings in the industry? Some are fine with it, some actually encourage it. Though, of course, there are some writers who are very against the idea of some random person taking characters or a story they dedicated so much time creating and messing with them. Again, as long as the fan fiction writer isn't silly and starts making money where they shouldn't and plays along safely with fair use laws, there's no issue with copyright. But some professionals use the excuse that a fan fiction writer could dedicate their time into writing their own stuff and not something from another person. They think it worked out so well for them that it has to work out for others, and also they think it's not good practice to write a story using pre-existing characters. But with that statement, it shows that some people completely miss the point of fan fiction. The whole point on fan fiction is to tell the stories the original writers couldn't, whether it be something like imagining a group of characters in another timeline altogether, or showing what happened to our heroes after the story is over, or showing the development of a background character that one fan saw so much potential in. And sometimes they do write about their own made-up characters interacting with the already established characters. He started talking sarcastically, but of course, if she's a female original character or a Star Wars lead, she's automatically a Mary Sue. Unless it's just outright copying the story word for word, which seems more stupid and time-wasting than anything else, fan fiction stories are brand new stories. They make you see things from a different point of view that you never thought of before, or can even grip you in a way fandom that the source material never did. But of course, there's the biggest argument against fan fiction: it's terribly written. Many people will read one poorly written fanfic and immediately label it as schlock or a wet dream or on paper scream. He corrected before continuing. But that's the equivalent of saying that all films are bad just because you watched one bad one. Or the same goes to reading one bad book. You can't sum up all fan fiction after just reading one, or even a few dozen. Just as there are bad fan fiction, there is also really good fan fiction. In fact, some of them can be actually better than the very thing they were inspired from. If a canon story has been going on down a less than pleasing path, fans can take it upon themselves to create a new storyline that they feel should have happened, and it can sometimes turn out for the better. Once upon a time, FanFic Critic mumbled between exaggerated coughs. Nostalgia Critic stared at her confusedly. Once upon a time. Okay, yeah, I was trying to do the cough thing that I did, but okay. Nostalgia Critic stared at her confusingly. That wasn't in the script. She shrugged her shoulders. What? I coughed. Sure you did. Anyway, not only are some fan fiction writers providing quality work for other fans, they can even go on to work in film and TV, or even publish their own books. Some of them are actually rewrites of fan fiction they once uploaded. People, and even society itself, tends to look down on fan fiction and fan fiction writers for these reasons, not realizing that these fans are taking the time to create something they love and are so passionate about. There are bad fan fictions. I wouldn't have a show if there weren't, but it can still be in a way for people to make friends or express themselves creatively. Now, I confess, I was also in that kind of mindset. I was so busy with trying to push the limits of my creative professionalism that I think I forgot that in the end, I'm still a fan too. Professional writers and directors are fans. Fan fiction is getting more and more mentioned in books, cartoons, whatever, because those who grew up in that generation are now becoming creators themselves. People are starting to recognize that fans who put so much into what they love are a blessing. Whether a fan fiction story has millions of views worldwide, or if it's just something shared with that one friend you know, it's worth it. I'm the Nostalgia Critic, and I would like to thank my special guest for joining me today. Thanks, and I'm the FanFic Critic, signing off now. And with that, their videos were cut off from their viewers, leaving the two critics to talk alone. Nostalgia Critic stretched his back. Well, glad that's finally over. I'm definitely going to get some sleep well tonight after nearly vanishing from the physical world altogether. FanFic Critic paused for a moment as something crept... Okay, you spelled crept wrong. Did you spell crept wrong? Oh, actually, you might not have. That's questionable. I'll look it up later. In the back of her mind, she threw a small smile at her buddy. That was a nice little confession you made. Oh, I guess I'm not italicized anymore. Yeah, I think they bought it. I find being sappy like that tends to get more views. He chortled. But stopped when he saw the serious glare coming from FanFic Critic. He raised his arms in mock defense. Relax, I'm kidding. Yes, I did mean what I said. Big shock. I can be wrong sometimes. Only sometimes. She raised an eyebrow. He narrowed his eyes at her for a little bit. After that little banter, he asked her curiously, So, are you going to go back to making more videos? Her eyes drifted sideways as she pursed her lips, thinking for a moment. We'll see what the future holds. I guess I just needed a little adventure to kick me right out of my rut. Besides, as long as no more mad alien morons threaten to destroy all fanfiction, I'm not gonna run out of them anytime soon, she chuckled. By the way, what did you do with Turl? A mischievous smirk formed across Nostalgia Critic's face. Oh, I put him in a place where I think he can put his talents to good use.
I believe in America.
Turl yelled proudly whilst waving his hand above his head dramatically.
America has made my fortune, and I raised my daughter in the American fashion. I gave her freedom, but taught her never to dishonor her family.
He was soon interrupted by a calm, monotone-speaking voice over him. No, that's not right at all. Turl stopped and stamped his foot, turning around to face his director.
Mr. Shyamalan, I don't think this is going to work.
Whatever do you mean? The master director, M. Night Shyamalan, asked. He walked onto the large theater stage to stand close to his uncooperative actor.
I'm just not sure I can go with your direction.
It is very simple. I want you to sound as drone and static as possible while staring blankly into the distance like a lost puppy. You are throwing too much emotion into your words.
That's the whole point of acting.
Turl screeched.
And really, we're rebooting Godfather now. Is nothing sacred in Hollywood anymore?
Well, our test audience seems to love it. Shyamalan responded and turned to point upwards towards the high row of seats where the theater's single occupant watches on, bouncidly. Oh my God, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life! Chester A. Bum called out from his seat. Turl felt like he was about to burst into tears when his director turned to face him once more. I was recommended you, and you are going to see this through to the end. Not to mention, you have been signed on for 5 sequels and any potential spin-off films. The producers are hoping we can make this into a cinematic universe. I think there's talk of a crossover coming up with the upcoming Shawshank Redemption prequel. No longer to hold back, Turl burst into tears. Ouch! FanFic Critic grimaced. And now it's back to italicized. Okay. You might want to fix that. If my dialogue's supposed to be italicized because we're talking through video, then just fix the other parts. And sorry for my hand being all in the camera. What? You feel sorry for him? Not at all. Just ouch. Hate to be in his shoes. She couldn't suppress a chuckle. Even if it was fate worse than death, it was no less than he deserved. Suddenly, her attention was turned elsewhere when an email had popped up. One linked into her fanfiction account. Oh, speak of the devil, I just got a review on my Lion King fanfic. Mildly, Nostalgia Critic nodded. Speak of the devil indeed. FanFic Critic opened up the email and was baffled to find what was inside. It was an anonymous reviewer. Or, it's an anonymous reviewer. Her voice drifted off as she turned to look at the Nostalgia Critic. You better read it. They might have liked it. As for me, I think it's time to say goodbye. She wanted to turn her attention back to the email, but something about the way it suddenly appeared in Nostalgia Critic's untroubled manner had her staring back at him. Yeah, I guess it is. You take care. You too. And if we do meet again, let it not be when we're about to get vaporized into a potentially endless void. Indeed. Their video feed was cut off, severing their connection. FanFic Critic now had the opportunity to read her new review. She wouldn't be able to thank her reviewer, seeing as it was an anonymous, but she wasn't an idiot. With Nostalgia Critic's behavior and the words written in the review, she had a pretty good idea of whom it was that brought a little smile to her face. This is a pretty good story. Obviously, you're a creative person. Until next time, take care. And that is the end of this fanfic. This was really good. You know, reading this fanfic, the author did such a great job with this. You could actually see this being like, say if I had continued to do the FanFic Critic, and, you know, say if Doug Walker was willing to do, you know, crossover reviews with non-channel awesome people, this actually would have been a great little special. I could see this being like a special, like, you know, like an actual video, like an actual episode of both of my show and his show in a sense, like if we did a merge thing. I mean, it was really well thought out. This was really good. I mean, if you ignore the minor typos and some of the awkward dialogue a little bit, for the most part, it was a really, really good fanfic. So I would recommend you check out the author of this story. You can check out the story itself or check out their other works. I do have the story in the link down below. The author's name, just to remind you guys, is Rolik, God of Power, and he's on fanfiction.net. So yeah, very good fanfic overall. It was nice reading it again. Well, yeah, I guess you could say it was nice reading it again. Although I never read the third chapter because I think when I was reading it, it was still just the first two chapters, and I think the author might have taken a long break from it. But, you know, it was a nice story. It was enjoyable to read. And it made me a little nostalgic for the old web show itself. So, yeah, I would recommend checking out this author and their other stories. Well, this is Ryoko368. I will see you guys in the next vlog. Until then, you guys take care.